Omega Johnson and Melissa Hudlin asked a question, and it's pretty much one and the same. I'll kind of explain both of them, but Omega first asked, can you share your favorite ETFs? And Melissa basically is asking the same question. Can you share your ETFs that you recommend? But she also goes on to say that she was with a financial advisor and he was in some really bad funds that had high expense ratios, as well as a very high AUM fee and also front end load fees, which is not surprising. And I have a lot of content around that. And she says, what ETFs do you recommend? I'm already going to fire him. Okay. So that's the situation that presents itself, the question that presents itself today. If you guys have additional questions, always go in the show notes below and let me know your questions because I love to answer these on podcast episodes. So to set the stage for this question, I could easily go and tell you what are the ETFs that I specifically invest in. And you might think that's the quick, easy answer. I don't want to listen to your podcast any further. I think that's the answer. Just give me the answer, dude. There's this old Bible verse, not verbatim, I think everybody knows it, is teach a man how to fish and he fishes for a lifetime, right? Give a man a fish and he fishes for a day, whatever. I really, really resonate with that quote. And here's why, is because if I tell you what the ETFs I invest in are, they're not applicable to you and they're going to probably hurt you in some capacity long term. And so I'd rather teach you a framework to think through and to understand in order to get the best possible outcome for your individual solution or particular situation. That's where I want to get you. Okay. So have some confidence, have some patience with me to get to that answer because it's going to be better off for you long term. I have a $7 investing course below. If you are asking this question as you're listening to this podcast, you need to go get that right now. This will be the best investment of your life. It's $7. Chill out. Okay. With that being said, let's actually set the stage for those that want to learn what my favorite ETFs are. I need to understand first and foremost, everybody's situation is different. So the shirt I'm wearing today might not make sense for my neighbor that's going to an interview. He's not going to wear a zip up. But for me, working from my home, filming a podcast, it makes a lot of sense for me. To walk in an interview like this with a hat on, I don't think that would be making a lot of sense. So everybody's financial situation's the same. It's all different. And so therefore, he's doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing, but for our own situations, no different with your finances. So the first thing I want everybody to understand is education, the stock market basics, fundamentally understanding how a market works. Now, again, my program is going to go through this in detail. And so I want you to go use that education today, right now. Go click on that below before you go into this any further. But when we talk about this, we understand what a market truly is. Like people hear stock market, they get confused. They like go into shutdown mode because they hear index fund, Roth IRA, index fund, ETF, index fund, ETF, index fund. You get my point. They constantly are hearing the same terms over and they're like, I don't know what these mean. So if you don't educate yourself, you're going to shut down or you're going to make a bad decision because you don't know everything that needs to be known. Now, you might think that's overwhelming. That's so much. I know I just want to pay somebody. But as Melissa said, paying somebody doesn't always result in better results for yourself. And oftentimes, a financial advisor does not have your best interest, to be honest. They're just pushing paper and they're just getting you into their AUM fee schedule, which we don't want necessarily that to happen. And so I need to understand fundamentally what the market is, how to actually go about this, investing in the market. There are some things I need to know. I need to know the levels of investments. And so the ETF question is actually the last question I want to answer in this framework. So that's the easy part. And I'll get to you. I'll share a screen. I'll show you exactly how to go about this. But if I don't set the stage and educate myself on every option, what are the brokers out there? Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab. Maybe I'm using an M1 Finance, something like that. What are the pros and cons of all those? I have tons of content on that. If I define what are the pros and cons, I can then figure out what makes most sense for my situation. Should I be at Vanguard? Should I be at Fidelity? Should I be at Charles Schwab? Should I use M1 Finance? I don't know. That's something you're going to have to figure out based on the education I provide. Secondly, is once I select a Vanguard, a Fidelity, a Charles Schwab, next I have to understand all the investment accounts I have. If you hear me on an IG Live say, somebody says, what are my favorite ETFs? I say X, Y, and Z, and you just hear X, Y, and Z. How do you know what percentage those are distributed within each account, within each broker? What if I have one over at Fidelity, one at Vanguard? I have 3 different accounts. I have different distributions within each account, portfolio allocations. How do you know that? You don't. And that's what's going to hurt you. You're going to hear me say something. You're going to apply it to your situation. You're probably going to do an even split, which is really disastrous because you don't know what you're actually investing in, and it's going to hurt you long term. That's why I'm teaching you this. So education, and then also once we get to the broker and understand the broker differences, we need to understand the purpose of investment accounts. I want you to figure out what my goals are. If I know my goal is retirement, I know I can link back to the education I have of 401ks and IRAs. If I know my child is going to go to school at 18 and they're 2 years old, and I want to start investing for their education, I know a 529 makes sense. But if I don't know what a 529 is, if I don't know what a brokerage is, what are the benefits and pros and cons, and I don't know what a 401k is, what are the pros and cons, and I just say, well, I heard Budget Dog talking about some percentage ETF that he's putting in some account, I'm just going to go do that. It's going to hurt you. And so I need to understand all of the education with these investment accounts so that when I figure out what my goals are, I can link it back to the account that makes most sense. That's applicable. Within that account, I have to select investment products. And this gets to where you mentioned like your ETFs and stuff like that. Investment products can vary. There's ETFs, there's mutual funds, there's index funds, there's stocks, there's bonds, there's REITs, there's all sorts of investment products. How do I know which investment product even suits my needs? Well, I also have to understand what allocation of those products, once I select those products, should I have? Like, just because I've selected 3 different investment products and there happen to be ETFs, I don't know which account I should be putting those in. And of those accounts, what percentage distribution should be? Should I do 75, 20, and 5? Should I do 50, 30, and 20? Which allocation should I do 95, 2.5, 2.5? What is the distribution within the various accounts that I have? We'll get to this answer in a second. The other things are fees and taxes. These are factual statements, right? What are the investment product fees that we have? We can open the fund disclosure and we can understand all the fees that go into it. Am I using outside help, financial advisor services? Are there AUM fees associated with that? 1% AUM, 2% AUM, whatever the case is. What taxes are applicable to me? If I put this REIT, real estate investment trust, in a brokerage account, that's taxed differently than it would be in a retirement account. So if I were to say and mention on a live, yeah, I like REITs, I think they're a really good investment option. You take that and you run with it and you say, well, I love a REIT. Brendan said a REIT's great, and therefore I'm going to put a REIT in my brokerage account. Well, you know what? I would never say that because that REIT is going to be taxed unfavorably. That's an unqualified distribution. That REIT is going to be put into a brokerage account when they pay the 90% of proceeds out to the shareholders. That shareholders are going to be taxed at 28%. Let's say that's their income tax bracket. They're going to be taxed at that tax bracket versus you put that same fund into a retirement account, that tax is not applied. That is a huge discovery. But if you just listen to bits and pieces without the full contextual picture, you're going to make bad decisions like that. This is what hurts me when people get mad that they don't get a quick answer to which ETFs I invest in. So now we know the fees and taxes. We know the portfolio allocations. We're going to get to that in a second. But we also need to know the risk profile. And I have a quiz for you guys, one of many. I wouldn't just rely on this quiz, but you can actually take this quiz in context with everything we talked about so far. So if you're educated on investment accounts, you know the investment products you really, really want at play, and you know the portfolio allocation and you know the fees and taxes, because this risk profile test will talk you through, ask you some questions and see what type of person you are. And so be very honest, brutally honest, in fact, with this questionnaire, because this questionnaire will get you to the outcome based on your risk profile. And it will say specifically, because you've taken this quiz in context of the investment accounts you've selected, you know it's a 401k when you answer this quiz the first time around. Then you go back through that quiz and you know the second quiz is for taxable brokerage for an early retirement goal. Then you go back through that quiz and you answer in context of a 529 that you have for your child set up, and you answer that quiz in accordance with that. And each one of the quiz is taken with each one of those accounts in action, which will get you to a portfolio allocation. That portfolio allocation is a recommended allocation. It's not the end all be all. There are multiple quizzes you should take. You should definitely do more education than just this, but this will get you to it. And if you want to speed this education journey up, go in the show notes below and get the $7 investing course right now. Investing on Autopilot, it will take you through every step of the equation. Now, once you get those, it's really, really simple. If it says I want 50% domestic equities, I know I need to go filter on Vanguard site or whatever broker I'm using, because I've already decided that, how do I filter to get U.S. domestic equities, all the options at that specific firm or broker. Same thing with Fidelity. If it says I need a 10% fixed income allocation. I can go to Fidelity and I can filter and allocate my money 10% to a fixed income product, a really, really good favorable fixed income product. But it depends what your allocation, what your quizzes, and what your education gets you to from an outcome perspective. But once you get to that outcome, it's super simple to select the ETF because now we can just go mix and match and filter. So the criteria I'm looking for, guys, when I'm looking through this are broad-based index funds and ETFs. So everything else, individual stocks, all that stuff's off the table. So I can instantly reduce that. I need to know my intended exposure. So when I do those quizzes, it's going to say domestic equity, international equity, fixed income, small cap, mid cap. All of those different types of options are there. So if I know large cap equities at play, it's 50% of my portfolio, I can go filter over in Vanguard site. So I'm going to walk you through this, literally show you on the screen. Now, if you're listening to this, you have to go to my YouTube to actually see this. But if you aren't, and you're actually here to see the screen and you're on YouTube right now, you're going to be able to see me walk through this real time, which is awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. You'll see it pull up right now, and you can see specifically where I'm pulling up Vanguard's website. So I'm just on Vanguard. This is the broker I decided. I go to personal investors. I go to products and services, and right here, I see all the accounts and plans. Let's just say I've opened an IRA. So I've clicked this button. I've walked through that process. I've opened the IRA. Within that investment account, I have to select investment products. Here they are. So I can go to overview. If I'm looking through all of these, I'm not really sure which one to select. But if you ask me what ETFs, I would probably go here. And now we know we can view all Vanguard ETFs here. But when you look at them, that's 90 results. And based on the quiz and education I took, I'm probably going to want to filter this, right? And so in the example I used, we talked about a total market ETF, right? So we filter on that. That instantly goes to 4 of 90 results. This is why this step is extremely easy. During this step, it should not be hard whatsoever. Your management style, you know you want an index, right? We talked about passive management style. Your asset class, you know you want stocks in this situation because we came to domestic equity based on this. And we know we have one US and one international. And so we know if we go to the US, because it's a US domestic equity, how hard is this to actually figure out? There's one option left. Now, if I took off the total market ETF and I just filter like this, there would be more options available, obviously, because now you're talking US based equities, but not necessarily a total stock market fund. But when you're looking at US domestic, you're looking at the full comprehensive picture, I would select this because this will give me my VTI, which is my total stock market holding. So that would suffice for, let's call it the 50% option. But let's say I went back through this and that wasn't what I was looking for. So I wasn't looking for a US stock. I wasn't looking for an index, whatever the case is. Instead, I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for, let's say personally, an actively managed fund, which I don't personally do. But again, as you can see, the filtering results dropped to 10 right off the bat. Let's say we're looking for a fixed income product, right? And then let's look for, credit quality. We want high credit quality. We're slowly and steadily reducing this. Let's just say we get to a couple of them. I can click right here and I can do compare. And I can compare side by side what are the pros and cons of each fund. I can open this funds as well. I can click on these and go through that as well if I want to. But this gives me the comparison tool. Expense ratio is identical. You get my point. You can literally go through each and every little criteria and understand the differences. Typically, I'm comparing, especially when I'm getting this granular and this detailed, I'm understanding the fundamental nature of these funds. So when I open these funds individually, I'm actually going to open those funds and understand what is the true product summary. And so when you click on one of these funds right here, it will open a second window and it will tell you the product summary straight up. So what are the differences of what you're looking for? Okay. And that's very, very important when you're making these decisions. And so that brings me back to my point over here. So when I'm going through and I'm deciding all that stuff, I've already got the answer. The answer was because of all the legwork I've done above. And now I just need to filter based on what the outcome is. And so, of course, I don't want to rely on just one specific, quiz I take. I'm going to do multiple. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to walk through the 7-day investing course below in the show notes. I'm going to do all of that without question. However, I'm also going to get to the conclusion of when you hear somebody say, I'm investing $500 a month into VTI within a Vanguard Roth IRA. That's the outcome. That's the easy part. So when I say that, I know it's easy, but I know I've done all the legwork to get to that conclusion. It's kind of like when you prepare for a big moment, all of the work is before that big moment. The moment itself is enjoyable. The moment itself is actually easier than you expected because you prepared so much for that moment that it's not as hard as you actually thought it was going to be. That's exactly how this should play out, to where you're going to get the conclusion that you should invest $250 in the 529, $500 in the Roth IRA, $750 in the taxable brokerage, whatever your conclusions are, but you've done everything in accordance with each goal. You've done it to each account because your goals are linked to the accounts, which then within you're selecting the portfolio allocation structure of the investment products by filtering like we just did, and you're going to get to your conclusion. Then all we got to do from there is automate. So selecting your investments is actually the easiest thing to do, but a lot of people don't want to do the legwork to get there. They don't want to educate themselves. They want the quick answer. And therefore, when something changes, they're always reliant on getting the quick answer, which isn't efficient for them long term. They will lose a ton of money if they're reliant on somebody else. This is why I talk so much heavily on education and why you should be doing all of these steps in order to get to what are your favorite ETFs. Now, with that being said, I told you how to answer my favorite ETFs. But again, now you have context behind all of the steps I went through to get to my actual conclusion. My conclusion is VTI, with the one you saw on the screen, also VXUS, also VWO. However, as a total portfolio, I'm roughly 80%, 15%, 2.5%, 2.5% other to make up that 100% total. But in retirement versus non-retirement, I have different allocations. In non-retirement, I do not have VWO. In retirement, I do have VWO at a small quantity. I also, in retirement, have an individual stock holding. In non-retirement, I do not have an individual stock holding, which is Meta. I also, in retirement, do not have a Bitcoin position. In non-retirement, I do have a Bitcoin position. So as you can see, if I just generally say that, people are going to take that and run with it and apply that to the whole enchilada, when in fact, mine's actually separated and the allocations within each account are slightly different based on the goals that I have for each one of those accounts. And so if you want to learn how to apply this to your situation, again, show notes below, $7 investing course. This will get you set up. It will walk you through each one of these steps, educate you on everything behind the scenes, and get you suited to actually start having confidence with your investments, which you should have investment confidence. There should be nothing holding you back with this. If you apply that, I promise your whole entire investment life will look different tomorrow. And I hope you guys take this for what it's worth and start using this today. With that being said, guys, I will see you next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brennan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.